Eynat, can I pause you just for a second? So
Sure.
just to better understand what other payroll vendors do. So they're paying people, but where are they stopping?
Payroll companies don't pay people, okay? Payroll company gets the data ready in order to pay people.
Eynat Guez is the co-founder and CEO of Papaya, a global workforce payroll and payment platform. Today on the show, we discuss how instead of expanding to HCM, she bet the company on owning the payment rails and how that resonates with the needs of the Fortune 500. Why every payroll system in the world is about to get a lot more complicated, not because companies are hiring more people, but because the workforce now includes AI agents and nobody's figured out how to tax them. And now she's making another bet. The 2030 workforce is humans and agents side by side, and your compliance infrastructure better be ready. Meg is a board member of Papaya Global. Welcome, Eynat.
Hi,
So glad to have you here.
it's so great to be here.
Well, we have been looking forward to this so much, but before we dive into our main topics of the day, I understand that you're an open water swimmer. I'm really curious. This is something that I have never, ever done myself, and I was wondering how you got into that and how it's going.
Yeah, I love it, honestly. I started as a swimmer when I was a kid. And then I realized that everything that I like about swimming, I actually like much more when you do that on open water. Because when you're swimming in a swimming pool, you are always waiting to hit the wall and then to turn around and hit the wall and turn around. And this is becoming your target. When you're swimming in the sea, you're waiting to see what's going to come. For me, it's the best therapy out there. It has everything that I need. It has sea, it has unexpected things, and obviously kind of nature. But it also have this complete mindset of disconnect. And I think also a sea is a very challenging place because you need to cope with whatever is coming, a big wave or a rock or, some animals. And I love it.
I actually love to swim in the sea, but I'm really more of a bobber, like dog paddler type.
Snorkeler.
Never too late to start.
So tell us how sports and business relate in your world.
Sport and business always relate. I started running and I hate running, honestly.
No.
I hate it. I hate every minute of running. But I think that setting yourself to personal challenges and getting into a habit and getting into a routine and seeing the improvement is something that, generally speaking, this is the foundation of every company and definitely on a startup when you need to be on a very, very high phase. And the only way to succeed is actually working in those two kind of graphs when you need to look ahead and you need to achieve.
So another thing that is difficult that people may shy away from is payroll. How do you like that segue? You like that one? All right. So let's talk about Papaya and payroll. So Eynat, back in 2020, the smart money was to go full HCM suite. Payroll vendors were looking to expand and they're adding all of the rest of HCM. But you read the market completely differently. And I just wanted to get like a little bit into your head here to understand how you were reading the market, how you were looking at the competitive landscape, and what you decided to do in that moment and how that's working out.
Back in 2020, what we realized is payroll sits in the intersections between HR and finance. And then you need to choose where do you bring more value, okay? And who's going to be a better buyer for you? But payroll is extremely complicated process, right? It has tons of liability, tons of different compliance changes and so on. And basically, it's money. One thing that we constantly heard is that there is a huge struggle between finance and HR. Like we would go to finance and they would tell us, we don't trust HCM systems. We don't trust the data. And when we would go to HR, they would tell us, yeah, HCM for us, this is an HR system. We don't really care about like the financial outcome at the end of the day. And in reality, an HCM formatting payroll, if you want to pay somebody $1,000, this is the HCM side, that's the gross salary. On the finance side, it might add up in $2,000. And then this whole kind of disconnect is actually very interesting. But the most interesting part for us was to also connect this to payment, because we said, okay, generally speaking, this data and the accuracy of the data worth zero if my money is not in the bank. This was for us the biggest kind of things that we uncovered, because we said once we can transition and transform this data to be financial data, but moreover a data that reflects payment in the bank and take the full liability on, this is where it becomes extremely interesting, extremely sticky, and also a real kind of differentiator and value proposition. And this is where we crossed the lines a few years later and started being what I call regulated by choice, because we chose to acquire the payment company, regulated on 7 different financial regulators globally. And we chose to adopt very strict financial regulation and systems.
So, Eynat, can I pause you just for a second? So
Sure.
Just to better understand what other payroll vendors do. So they're paying people, but where are they stopping? I would think that they're actually making payments to individuals, but where is the gap there?
So payroll companies don't pay people, okay? Payroll company gets the data ready in order to pay people. Now, if you work in your own country, it's always very easy because generally speaking, 100% of the payroll company, they've built bridge connectors to local bank data formats in order to assure that they can provide you with the right format, or they can connect ACH and then pay people. And Papaya is all about global, okay? So our word is always, we support you on the global landscape. I mean, wherever you live and land, you know exactly how to operate. Normally, the challenges of very basic things like setting up a bank account in your home country is easy, okay? But if you're going to set up currently a bank account in the UK, it's going to take you 6 to 12 months. And Papaya is all about solving the global kind of infrastructures and making them seamless. So payroll companies does not pay people. They generate the data that a company needs in order to do the last mile of paying people. And this data basically breaks because generally speaking, payroll data is not a financial data. Bank formats is not the same globally. So it really depends if you are working on a very known structure and format and scheme. This is still your liability as a company. And this is where we built these connectors and said, we are a payroll company that actually pays people. We really take the liability end to end on the land date, and we take the liability on the accuracy on the payroll payment itself. So it's not about Amy getting her payslip in the mail, which is great, and she's very happy about the accuracy of the payslip, but she doesn't have the money in the bank. It's about kind of assuring that those two things happens both together.
The combinatory piece is where it gets interesting, of course. When you're thinking in terms of global workforce, you really have to think in terms of how do you enable that agility across the globe. The number of people I talk to that take their assumptions from their home country and assume that it's going to work exactly the same in another country. And this is both for hiring as well as restructuring or letting people go. They don't fully understand both the compliance and the payroll infrastructure until they start to get to that moment where they're like, oh, wait, I have a different set of regulatory hurdles than I fully appreciated. So help me understand how your understanding of this life cycle and how it's different. How do you bring that back to HR organizations so that they can be better informed and better understand what they're signing up for and what that work really looks like?
Yes, it's a great question. So I'll start by the fact that our mindset, and I think generally speaking, on the global mindset, you always need to have this mindset of you don't know what you don't know, right? And in payroll, in employment, in compliance, in obviously all of the liabilities, it's even harder because we assume that we understand things the way that they work in our home country. But in reality, it's not working this way. It's not working this way on the compliance and payroll side. It's definitely not working this way on the payment side. And the simplest example that I always give people is that if 3 of us currently are in the US and you want to send me $1, it's going to take you less than 10 seconds to do that, okay? And you have multiple tools and way. But if I'm currently in the UK and you want to send me $1, it's going to take you probably a day, maybe 3 days, and it's going to cost you much more than $1. And because this is where we don't live on the same ecosystem, and those simple actions are becoming extremely complicated when you are eventually crossing the borders. And this is our mindset in payroll, is first, I think the main thing is, obviously, we don't want to step in the room of any HR or finance and frighten them and tell them, you are not able to do this, you're not able to do that, or it's extremely complicated. We need to take this complexity and make it extremely simple and make it extremely accessible for them. This is why, and I'm sure that we are going to talk about AI, but I'll give a very good example that we just released recently. We released our Agentic compliance knowledge base. And this knowledge existed in Papaya since day one. By the way, this is the first go-to and marketing and client tool that we generated when we were a bootstrap company. We generated a knowledge base that is readable. If you have a hard time kind of falling asleep at night, you can read about compliance and labor laws in Canada, in Mexico, in China, in Brazil, and trust me, this is working better than any other appeal. But the main thing that this is trusted and this is updated, and you can see when it was last updated, and you can understand this is trusted. And this is where you gain your knowledge, because you also don't want to go to any management meeting and present things that are not based on facts. Or you don't want to find out half an hour after you signed a contract in China that this person cannot be terminated without a year of severance because you just created a huge liability to the company. And then we translated this whole knowledge base into a Agentic kind of compliance knowledge base where you can ask questions on as the similar experience that we currently all have with our AI tools. But you can also bring your own policy. So this is where we take your word and translate it locally. So you can bring your expenses policy. Expenses is the biggest nightmare that every payroll person have, because sometimes paying $50 takes you 5 hours of work. So we are kind of taking you through this knowledge gap very, very easily. And obviously with the wonders of AI, making it extremely simple to all of a sudden see how things looks on the other side. And then even if you don't understand the nuance, you understand the differences. And then we can eventually walk through and obviously kind of explain the nuance. But we are starting from the baseline that we understand that there are differences. You cannot eventually have one global policy. This is not working. I hope that the majority of HR and finance people already kind of understand this fully.
So you mentioned that if you were going to pay $1 in the UK, it's going to cost you more than $1 and it's going to take some time. Is that something that through the way that you've tackled payments is reduced, or is it just that there's more transparency around it? I'm just trying to understand like how you saw the problem and how you're tackling the problem.
I'll explain, because financial compliance is quite complicated. When you are a financial kind of institution, you need to assure that you have KYC, that you have...
Maybe you should explain KYC, because most HR people are not familiar with that. Finance people are, yeah.
Any financial institute, it can be a Venmo, Zelle, a PayPal, or a bank, needs to assure that when they are paying somebody, when they're onboarding an individual or company, they need to go through a KYC, know your client process, and assure that you are who you say you are, that they are validating kind of basic data, that your ID is valid, that, this is not a fake identity. Really kind of basic things that basically the financial regulators and world is forcing us.
Hold on. And the reason for this, just to anchor everybody, it's anti-money laundering regulation. It's to make sure that there's traceability to where money is flowing across countries.
This is start with anti-money laundering, but it's actually kind of broader now, with sanctions, Russian sanctions, for example. With people that are terrorists, they are flagged as sanctioned people personally. So you have a lot of databases with people, non-terrorist criminals and so on, and people that are sanctioned for getting paid or getting services by a financial kind of institute. Now, if you are paying $1 to somebody that is in this list, this is on you. So this is where we see the massive kind of fines of the regulators to banks and financial institutes and so on, because basically this is your obligation to assure that every kind of dollar that you pass through is going to people that are allowed to receive it. The financial world, and basically the payroll world, by the way, and any kind of tax world was not designed on a multi kind of country mindset, okay? It was designed on a very local mindset. When we started looking on payments, we realized that this current system is still very much relying on a connectivity between banks, what we call SWIFT transactions, that takes a lot of time, that eventually creating a chain of banks that are just sending money one to another. And instead of having direct connectivity, you have zero transparency where the money is. And you also you can't control the compliance. So if you're working on main countries, normally it's shorter. But if you're trying to send money to smaller countries like Pakistan, Latin America, this is where you have more and more banks in the chain, and it's becoming very unpredictable, a very expensive and very long journey to send the funds. And when we stepped into the world of fintech. And fintech is a very different word than payroll, but I would claim that any payroll company would become a fintech company eventually, because as you said in the beginning, every payroll company eventually needs to assure that they're breaking the data barrier and becoming the payees as well. This is where, for us, connecting the dots and assuring that we own the money flow and that we can create a real-time, instant global network, it's a huge challenge. I mean, it's very complicated. It's a very complicated network to hold because banks are not working on the same protocols, not on the same data flows, not on the same schema. I mean, they're very, very different in the way that they're operating, and you need to connect the dots between countries, between compliance, between banks. But once you are setting up those infrastructures, this is becoming infrastructures that are actually serving you.
So leaning into payments and then also compliance was very different from what anyone else was doing. What has that allowed you to do differently that maybe you wouldn't have expected initially? And when you decided to go down this route, what are you able to do now with Papaya as a result?
First, step into rooms of Fortune 500 companies and feel very comfortable. Because for them, if you hold a first kind of grade of financial regulator certificates, it's much stronger than just saying I'm a payroll processor, okay? Because payroll don't have standards. They don't even have regulation currently. So generally speaking, everybody can be a payroll processor. And we thought that this is eventually the worst thing in the market currently, that you can sell payroll to a marketing statement without everybody assuring that you are doing things correctly, that you hold data correctly, that you are really compliant of everything that you are doing. So having this conversation with the mindset of we understand that the most important thing that we sell in payroll is not the UI, is not the data, is not the platform, is compliance, is peace of mind. It's actually the future peace of mind, because maybe I did a terrible payroll mistakes, but you don't know. In 5 years' time, somebody's going to audit the company, and all of a sudden, 1% of wrong deductions is becoming a bill of $10 million. And this is eventually the thing that we want to step into the room and assure that people feel comfortable, that when we are selling them payroll, they understand that we take compliance very seriously, they understand that we take regulation very seriously, and they understand that we work towards them in every single country. So I think first, this is the mindset, because it's not move quick and break things in payroll. I mean, this is not the mindset that you need to have, because break things will cost a lot of money to your clients and will put a lot of entities and individuals at risks. As you started this podcast very politely saying that nobody likes to talk about payroll, I will say more bluntly, be the most boring person in the room, but the one that have the most excitement about this compliance and boring stuff, so people feel comfortable about you.
I think that's remarkable. I mean, this is an area that's so scary for so many people, right? And it's like you're walking into the lion's den and without any fear. So I would imagine that you're making the other payroll vendors really frightened, because you're putting a lot of pressure on others to step up and go this route. And it's not really natural, I think, for people to want to get into this territory. I'm rather impressed and intimidated by you. And that's all I'm going to say right now. So Meg, you talk.
You're in good company, I'm sure. So when I get feedback about her, it falls into that frame, maybe slightly different words, but absolutely consistent. I would like to talk a little bit about trust. One thing we haven't talked about is What is the difference for the end worker's experience in a world where the payroll vendors care about payment? What is different for them, and what was the point of view that Papaya took strategically in thinking about not just making the Fortune 500 feel confident in their business strategy, but all the way down to the employee or contractor experience?
First, there is no company that eventually is designed to support individuals' kind of issues. And when we are looking on this, it's almost like a company basically is providing you a car, okay? But when you have an accident, you're not calling the company and telling them, hey, I got stuck along the road and can you help me, right? You need to call the insurance company, and eventually your company that gave you the car need to have full trust that the insurance company will take care of you, because nobody else in the room from the company side will leave everything and eventually kind of help you. They don't have the tools, they don't have the ability, they don't have the playbook. It's not their job. So for us, we are the insurance company. And when we step in the room, and it doesn't matter if it's a small client or a large client, we need to assure that when they're individuals that work for them, and they do a lot in order to assure that he feels that he's been taken care of, gets the bits and bytes of the service that he needs. And nobody cares about his payslip until he cares about. And when you care about, when you need to submit your taxes, when you want to take a mortgage, I mean, when you need this for some formal declaration, okay? Because you definitely not collect it and read it to your kids. So this is, a very short, small example where we are creating tools where you have access all the time, even if you're not working for this company, in the past 2 years, because if you are currently getting a requirement from your tax kind of authority to submit a report, you need this document. And we all know that you probably don't know where it is, so you need to go back and beg for your payroll company or your employer to provide this to you. And we want to assure that this is an experience that is good, even if you are a current or past worker, because we know that generally speaking, we need to provide you with the assurance and the peace of mind that we'll be there when you need us. And it's the same thing if the bank is holding your payment because they need some guarantee from you. Our current success rate on payment delivery on the day of the payroll is extremely high, although we are growing every single month. Failures can come from multiple kind of aspects. We are taking liability on the pay date, okay? Although we cannot guarantee the pay dates. No bank that we work with and no financial network that we work with is giving us the same guarantee. And if you didn't get paid, we will investigate why you didn't get paid first, but we'll assure that you have money here and now. Okay? We're putting pressure to assure that this is being resolved, and the majority of the cases, the resolution time is the same business day, but our commitment is to assure that the company feels that we are there when something happens, when this accident along the road happens to their employees. Because, payroll, when everything goes well, it's an easy job, right? But we are here to resolve those individual cases, the cases that people need help. One of our biggest win at the time was CyberArk. CyberArk just was acquired by Palo Alto. They've been with Papaya now, I think, for 6 or 7 years as a payroll kind of client for us. And when they chose us, they said, listen, with our current global payroll provider, if we have an employee taking a sick leave in Italy, and we need to understand how we process this, we need to wait in average 10 days until we get an answer, okay? It doesn't make sense for us because life are not working this way. We need to understand what we need to do here and now. And you gave us the commitment, you as Papaya, that you'll have immediate support, same day from a real experts on ground.
I love that. As an individual and based in the US, you don't tend to truly comprehend all of the logistics. And I've had global teams forever, but primarily in large organizations where there were people that were sorting out all these things for me. But
let me comment about this because, when we were raising funds on early stages, so our investors always told us, CEO, don't think that there is a problem here. I said, yes, he doesn't see the sweat every single cycle. So you had a really good team that eventually did a really good job if nothing kind of came to the surface, although they were sweating a lot.
Exactly. And the other thing that I think about is even in my own life when I've done wire transfers to other countries, just the entire SWIFT network infrastructure, the money comes out of my account pretty reliably and quickly, but I don't have full visibility of when it gets into the destination. And it feels very stressful in that in-between space where there's just no traceability to it that is available to me as an end user. So help me understand that traceability bit. Like what is different when I'm using Papaya for a payment for me as an organization of being able to keep an eye on that? Is it just that it goes faster, or is that where the visibility comes from, or do I have better understanding of how that money is moving?
So I'll explain this. I'll start by saying that internally we always say that if it takes you shorter to hop on a plane and deliver an envelope with money rather than just send it in the bank, it means we have a problem. If you need to send currently money to Mexico and the bank will tell you that it will take 3 days, okay, and Mexico is like 5 hours flight from you, you literally have a choice. You can take this money, hop on a plane and deliver it. And for me, this is the one thing that we need to always keep in mind, that we need to assure that infrastructures meets our needs and the alternative that we have. Because you gave a great example. SWIFT is one payment network that has been built by a group of major banks. And basically, they are working in a way that they are sending funds from one point to another point to another, okay? And this is where it creates the change, and this is where you don't have the traceability and the visibility. While we work directly. So the way that we did this is we eventually source local kind of banks in every single country that we work, covering 150 countries directly. And we know that when we send funds, we send this directly to the bank. So we have clear visibility and APIs to understand where it lands. We know exactly when it has been deposited. And if something breaks, we can see this. We can see the data. We can see the technical failures. So the money is not floating somewhere in the space where nobody knows currently where it is, or it needs to kind of pick up the phone and call 3 people along the way. By the way, Papaya is definitely not the only company, and every single fintech company that is operating on a cross-border environment builds the majority of their network directly. The one thing that we did on top of it, which is very unique to Papaya, we've set a structure where you can bring your payroll data as it is, no changes at all. So we don't ask you to meet our formats. In order to assure that we can take this, we can translate this to our financial data on the back end and send this on your behalf. So we are not expecting you to be an expert on the bank schema, to understand what IBAN do you need to use, what SWIFT code do you need to use, how the bank details needs to use, because this is really where the failures are. Half of the failures are not a problem of sending the funds. They are just basically kind of the technical schema and the data that you provided, might be 99% accurate, but it's not 100% accurate. So the money is going to be bounced back after like 3 days of floatings along the way. And this is where we really invested a lot of time, assuring that we take the payroll data, have zero change. By the way, it's also, on the mindset of the cyber and zero trust. I don't want anyone to be able to change kind of the destination, and assure that you have a full audited trail from the minute that you sign the payroll file until money received in the bank.
So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about Papaya as an organization that started, I'm going to say pre-AI, but of course, you know what I mean, and has, transformed greatly through the latest AI changes. And I want to understand things like, how are you bringing AI into Papaya? How are you reformatting your organizational structures? Like, how are you looking at your company differently than you were in 2020?
The amount of investment that we put into AI in the past 2 years is massive. And we always had AI as a back end of engineering, okay? So, and I think this is given every tech company used AI, in the past kind of decade or 2 decades. But bringing AI to the front and say, okay, everybody's going to use AI, engineers, non-engineers, this is the first decision that you need to do. And after you are making this decision, I also think that you need to understand how you implement this, because what we saw in Papaya early stages is that I can give you a ChatGPT or a Claude kind of license, and you're going to start obviously using it with queries and prompt and so on. And this is great. This is nice. It probably saves you some time, but it's not a life-changing event. It's not changing the efficiency, or it's not critically changing the way that the organization operates. And the second kind of phase of doing a real change is really understanding that you need to change the infrastructures. And this is the biggest investment. This is also the most important investment from my perspective that any management needs to decide that they're doing, because you need to assure that you are building the infrastructures correctly. Now, every single data source and system in Papaya is currently connected to our AI tools, okay? So I can basically get any kind of Salesforce data and format and anything directly from AI kind of tool. Same with the ERP system, same with any other tools that we have. Now, building and connecting this is basically a very big investment that have zero ROI in the beginning, because you are just sorting it and you are spending a lot of money on doing this.
Did you set up like a separate team to focus on the infrastructure? How did you go about doing that?
We brought an amazing team to lead AI kind of revolution. We brought one of the best person that I've personally met, Eli Brosh, VP AI, who is our VP AI, to lead this. And I said, he's great because he's extremely talented and obviously knowledgeable in AI, but he also have the ability to speak with non-engineers and assure that they understand them. Because I think this is the biggest frustration in organizations. Currently, engineers have one mindset, but then you have 50% of the company, 40% of the company that are non-engineers and have completely different mindset. And you need to transition them, but you cannot transition everybody to be developers tomorrow morning. And it's also, I think it's the wrong transition, because I'm going to be a very mediocre developer and I think that I'm going to do great, but in reality, I might do quite a lot of damages. So I need to do the best, eventually using AI to become a better form of myself and not to transform myself now to kind of fulfill my engineering dreams. We brought a team. We set a very, very clear target. We have a 3x efficiency target by year end, and we are measuring it constantly. And we are measuring that with every manager. So team lead and directors and obviously VPs levels and so on, they need to measure the team efficiency. They need to tell us how many hours they saved on a monthly basis by using AI every single month. So they need to analyze this with the team. I wanted to think this way. This is where the dialogue is currently very fragile. It's not, okay, you saved 70 hours. Now, how many people you are sending home? The dialogue is, how do you bring more efficiency? How do you bring more quality? How do you do things that are more strategic to the organization and are not just from the Firedville kind of side? Because you started from the vision and then you are taking it to, okay, let's save 10 hours this month and let's save 20 hours this month. And people are starting to see that they're actually changing their mind, because I think that we are rewiring our minds currently. And it's a very, very interesting experience, basically on every human being, definitely in a workspace that just started. We've been working in specific ways, and now you're asking people to do things completely differently. We have a great kind of monthly show and tell where teams are coming and they're showing what they've built and how they executed agents and so on internally and with their teams, or how they do things differently. We ask them to show what's the outcome, what's the measurable outcome in ROI, but we also get them to be builders, to bring them to the first front. And all of a sudden, somebody from the accounting team can come and say, wow, look, I've built this report. I mean, clients are much happier. I actually improved the NPS score. I mean, although I'm just like a back office person, and I'm happier because I have a better report. So I think this creates engagement and collaboration. So we are still in this process, because I don't think that this is an ending process. And to be honest, I don't think that everyone will survive this process. So some people are not changing. We hired a CRO recently that told me a sentence that I really like, says, change the people or change the people. This is the mindset that you have to operate, because you need to decide what type of organization you need to be. For me, not using AI is no different than not using your email these days. And if this is the mindset of the company, you need to be very, very stubborn. You need to be very consistent about that. And you need to assure that everybody understands that this is how this organization operates now. And once I gave you all of the tool, the infrastructures, I need you as an employee to collaborate and assure that you are supportive and that you are making it happen.
So it sounds like you have a really strong foundation in terms of tying the AI usage at an individual or team level to actual outcomes. But I was also just wondering, based on the ebbs and flows of the market right now, the concept of token maxing, and that now everyone's like, how do we budget for tokens? What is your take on that? Did you go through the ebb and flow as well? Is your process around understanding what the ROI is sufficient, or are you doing things proactively to make sure that usage isn't going to skyrocket and kill your financials?
Yes. So we took a very different approach from day one. Okay. We said we're going to limit usage for everyone. And then we are going to see if this is enough. And then we are going to increase. Because I also don't want to fail you. Because what can happen very, very easily with AI is that you are an amazing kind of enthusiastic worker. And now you go home and you want to show your kids. And all of a sudden you're generating this great 3D movie. And we get like a $100,000 bill. You don't understand. You don't even understand this. So now I failed you because eventually I made you create a huge or quite severe damage without your intention. And this is where you create kind of a friction. So we said we're going to limit everyone and we're going to explain everyone very, very carefully. What does it mean? AI usage.
That was so prescient, by the way. I mean, again, you were zagging when others were zigging, right? Yeah. Yeah. Well done.
Because
well done.
I think it's very easy to fail people. I mean, on good intention. And this is where you lose them because you said, okay, what do they want from me? Now I can use AI. Now I can't use AI. I mean, what is it? What are the instructions? And when you tell them, listen, this is a great tool. It's expensive. I mean, you need to understand that this is an operational organizational tool. So please don't create your rabbit kind of photos on AI birthday parties of your kids because that's going to be expensive. And you're giving them clear instructions and guidance so people understand how to operate. So I think you need to understand that this is part of the journey and this is a lot of time investments. You need to also understand that you need to invest the time because this is a whole new training and process. And if you are not doing it, this will end up by very costly mistakes that from my perspective, the worst thing that I didn't want the organization to feel that we failed because we were trying to succeed, right? Because that on the way to be a very successful organization, we failed very badly. Because this is hard. I mean, those are the scars that afterwards stays with you. So this is how we are operating. I think it works very well. And I also think that the fact that we are bringing people to the front and giving them the ability to show what they're doing, it's basically opened up your mind. I think what's, for me, obviously, the most amazing things with AI is that you think that you're a great user and that you do great things. And then somebody is showing you something that they did with AI. I said, how come I didn't think about it? And then all of a sudden you understand how you do another thing and another thing and another use case. So I think we are on a very transformative decades and period of our life, which is exciting to people that likes to wake up in the morning and understand that they might be different people today.
Yeah, I love that. I talk about this as sort of the evolutionary changes that we're all going through. And I think you articulated that so well. The arc of first, it's discovery about a tool and what it can do, but ultimately it becomes discovery about your own level of creativity and imagination of what can happen. And every one of those things requires a lot of both mental agility, it requires a lot of growth mindset, and it does require a lot of unlearning, the ability to let go the things that you were sure of because they may not apply in this future.
I agree. And one of the things that we did in the beginning, and I'm happy to share the link here if you want with the crowd, and I need to give some of the credit to Ramp because we learned a lot from what they published about their AI transformation. We did a survey internally. Where are you currently with your AI kind of journey? Okay, as an individual. Maybe you think that you are an expert in AI, but in reality, I mean, you don't know a lot about AI, but in your mind, you think that you are doing amazingly well because you are doing better than your mother, your grandmother, or your daughter. And we created 4 levels. And we let people kind of fill this questionnaire and then get a real-time kind of a understanding of what is their level of AI, okay, comparing to the levels that we have, and where they think they are in this journey. To set them a mirror that currently does not exist, right? Because again, it's a new learning, it's a new word, so nobody knows what are the measurements. But it also created a language in Papaya because all of a sudden people are proud. Hey, I started at L0 and now I'm L1. I think I'm going to be L2 next month because I already started building my own agent. So people also can grade themselves and really for sure that they see their kind of growth journey. We all want to be better. We all want to kind of understand what's the starting point and where we want or how we are progressing. And obviously the whole tool, the whole questionnaire was made with AI and that HR created internally. And we started using it with clients when we do change management on payroll and transformation, digital transformation. Because when you are in a room with 20 people and you tell them, we're going to use AI and everyone's nodding, you don't know what they take from that. It's gamification, so they feel comfortable. It's a nice kind of survey, nothing harmful and so on. Then you can really work and understand what's the basic here and how do you progress from here.
Yeah, I love that. It's such a gift to give people that transparency into not only what's possible, but what will ultimately be expected, right? So it's not necessarily the expectation now, but it gives them a clear roadmap to where they need to get to, and that's really beautiful. Yeah, well done.
Thank you.
So you've talked quite a bit about the 2030 workforce and the inclusion of agents in that. And that's been a little bit controversial, not your writing per se, but just kind of this concept of our agents workers, our agents employees, like how should we be looking at that? I'm in the camp that we do need to be looking at agents as workers, which I think is in alignment with you. How are you looking at that in terms of how you're structuring your own workforce and how you're helping your clients as well?
I think this is a very great place where there is an kind of intersections between our internal operation and also how we design our product and so on to support our clients on the workforce side. And I think that agents are here to stay, okay? And now we are just going to increase the agent usage. And honestly, they are going to replace real jobs and real works that people are doing. And even internally, we tell people, agents will replace what you're doing currently. So start working on your next role because client-facing, human interactions, they will not replace you. Human will need to understand that the biggest advantage that they have is to speak with humans because we don't want to speak with agents. So if we are only doing a work that agents can do, I mean, that's it, we are doomed. So we really need to move to the front seat. And I do try to explain our team that this is eventually where they need to thrive. So everybody that doesn't feel comfortable to speak with human really needs to rethink his career. Product-wise, it's also very interesting because generally speaking, we see this as a workforce. And if you're looking on this as a workforce, you need to start planning for that. I think it's safe enough to understand that when the human workforce will be decreased, government will step in and say, okay, pay taxes for your agents, because honestly, we don't think the taxes going to be just kind of let go and a government will say, okay, I mean, I'm happy not collecting 10 or 20 or 30% kind of taxes currently because you have less people involved. I actually think that the tax will be increasing because they need to support people that are not working currently. So we need to start planning this generally as a worker and needs to start understanding how we onboard them, how company can monitor them, and how they can pay them, and how they can reduce taxes, and who is this the instance that is eventually standing behind it. Because as we kind of spoke before about KYC and anti-money laundering and so on, this is currently a new world of, I mean, who I'm paying for? Because eventually there is a real human here that is eventually collecting funds. So there is a lot of things that we are currently building towards this. For us, agents are vendors, okay? So we need to assure that you can operate vendors that are agents in our platform, and you can pay them and you can streamline payments. But we understand also that the way that things are going to evolve very, very quickly is that you're going to have multiple agents that are doing very, very specific tasks on a very specific cost or kind of work base. And you need to support this. By 2030, you won't have people holding one position in a full-time kind of job. So the whole world of work will be, I have 10 different kind of employers. I'm doing a lot of different things for each one of them. As a person, I'm speaking as a person now, my whole kind of career is currently kind of split between multiple employers that are using my talents and skills for very, very specific things. This whole shift of how do you create immediate onboarding to payment, because currently the whole world of work and the payroll is basically built backwards, right? You are already working and you know that you're going to be paid only in 10 days. But you know that the company owes you money. I mean, there is no doubt that you worked for the last 20 days, of this month. But you will only get your money in 10 days. And the way that we're looking on this, it's not only about bringing agents in, it's also about bringing a real-time payments in. So if you did 1 hour of work, 1 day of work, you need to be able to be paid immediately. So you will be eventually owning your funds the minute you consume work, because this is where the work will be connected directly to the money and to the taxes and so on. So the way that we are structuring Papaya currently, and we have a very big vision towards kind of in 2027, is to be able to streamline every single transactions in the world of work, of human agents, vendors, and anything else on a real-time basis. From onboarding with all of the complexity that we said before of KYC and who you are and onboarding for taxes and so on, to payment on the same instance. Same day if you want, just eventually kind of, you need to assure that somebody delivered the work that they did. So, I mean, if we'll compare it to production, basically just release the code to production and that's it. And you get paid.
I thought I heard you say something about paying the agents based on how much work they're doing and like how many hours. But is that what you mean, or do you plan, or do you charge based on the outcomes in terms of the outcome-based payment versus effort-based payment? Like, how are you looking at those two?
I think you'll have multiple models. You have hours-based, you have token spend-based, you'll sell usage, and you'll have outcome-based. I mean, very similar to the world of work today. You have people that are being paid on a salary then scope of work and time and materials. So it's going to be relatively the same on the agentic world.
So one of the things that I like in your vision, in the past, one of the more complicated parts of a core HR was this concept of multiple jobs for a single person, where you may have an entirely different set of expectations on credentialing, and you also might get paid differently while working for a single place in multiple types of roles. And this was a capability that was really hard and really complicated, and also was added another layer to anything else you did in the system. The canonical example was you worked at a university hospital, you were both a surgeon and a teacher, and you got paid different rates for those functions, and you had different credentialing requirements, et cetera, et cetera. And you literally had different work contracts. We're getting to a world where that explodes even more. It will sometimes be outcome-based. Sometimes it'll look a little bit like a gig economy, even if you're an employee, like you can be doing it full-time, but still doing multiple types of functions. You could be an independent contractor working for multiple organizations, but your expectation as a worker of what you should be receiving in terms of compensation becomes more complicated and more real time, right? So you expect a broader understanding and flexibility in the work agreement, and you also expect better access to the earned wages. And that can be, you're an hourly person and you need that earned wage access, or it could be even you're a fractional CEO or something like that. But you can see very clearly that this dimensionality really explodes. And I believe that has pretty significant implications to both what an HR system looks like and then what is even the definition of work. Are you talking to customers that are already pushing you in this way, or is this really just you understanding the signals and thinking about it ahead of them?
So I think customers currently understand and clients understand that the change is coming. I think we are all trying to understand how we get ready and what is the way to there and how do we design this better. I would also say that I think that it's safe to say that HR system will actually be also owned and managed by the individual that works on 10 different companies. So all of a sudden, I'm the client and I own my own different kind of employers that I need to manage under one system, and then I need to assure that they are paying me because it's a big hassle. Eventually, I need to assure that I consolidate everything into one place. So this is, I would say, independent individual HR system that manage their employers and not the other way around that manage the employees. All of those things are early days, even if you have those cases where you have individuals in other countries and then agents or vendors that are operating agents. So we are still in the world of let's use the current infrastructures and assure that we operate them on the best way, that we can pay quickly, that we can assure that compliance is being kept and so on. But let's design the future and let's understand how future looks like.
All right, last question, a rapid fire one. Where did the name Papaya come from?
So Papaya is a combination of people, payroll, payments. And the nice thing about papaya is that if you're going to say the word papaya, the fruit papaya, in 80 countries around the world, they will tell us, oh, papaya is ours. Yes, we love papaya. Papaya is very local fruit. And basically what we do is we unify the local experience into one global platform. So the people, payroll, payment are unified, but it's also very localized. So this is where it came from.
I love it. Well, it's a very fun word to say. Well, thank you so much, Eynat. This has been really illuminating and fascinating and wonderful. So thanks so much. Exactly. Yeah.
It's been so fun.
All right, Meg, you ready to Leadership Corner?
I am. Let's read Leadership Corner.
All right, here we go. I feel like I'm so far ahead of where the market is. But how do I get my team to see what I see? How do I keep people running towards something they can't fully picture yet?
Oh my gosh, this is so important, especially right now where there's so much cognitive dissonance in the system of people's past experiences not being helpful to seeing the future, and in fact, sometimes can get in the way. So I live in this space a lot, and I will give you some ideas. Nothing is foolproof. The real thing is patience and time and consistency, but be a little more concrete than that. There are some key tactics that I use in the beginning of any transformation when I'm bringing forward a new idea with a lot of innovation. So there's not proof yet, and a lot of the evidence might be pointing to the contrary. So first, I get convicted, and it sounds like you've already got to this point, that I know that this is important. And that matters a lot because you're going to have to do some pretty heavy lifting over time to get that reality to happen. But first, you have to believe it yourself. Typically, getting to believing it myself comes from recognizing patterns that may be coming from different sources than what I usually look to. So oftentimes my innovation is in product, and so I will get sources that are maybe outside of current customers. Maybe I'll get it through understanding markets or looking at different industries and how they do things and recognizing similar patterns. I also sometimes get it from either what isn't said or conversations that I have with customers where they lead in one direction, but they drop a hint or an idea in a different direction that gets me thinking. So I try to take some time to bring those things together and clarify not only the what, but the why when I start down a mission. So I get convicted, I get convicted based on a series of signals that most people don't see, or even if they see them, wouldn't understand what I'm seeing in those signals. I then take the time to articulate my point of view, and I usually do this written because by writing it, it helps me clarify my own thinking. And I don't mean asking Claude to write this for you. I mean literally writing it down for yourself. Bringing in the examples and the point of view of what it is that you're seeing and what you think the future looks like and what you need to do to capture that future. So that's step one, and that is nowhere near sufficient. So you will go around evangelizing that, and you may not be burned at the stake for it, but you will be felt or seen as a little bit heretical in having a contrarian point of view.
Can I pause you at this stage? Because I just want to add to this in terms of what you're saying. So
Of course.
a really important part of what you just said was a bit of like showing your work. You're getting all these signals and detecting all these patterns, and like all this stuff is forming in your head, and you've created this conviction, but it's really hard to get people to understand it without being able to say, like, well, these are the signals and these are the patterns. But a lot of the time you don't even really know what those were. And it could have been for a while too. And so you're saying, show your work, write it down, etc. But that can be really difficult. And so what I would add to that is if it's really hard for you to do that, find someone who can pull it out of you. So it's really hard for me to do that. And I found like my chief of staff, Connie Lee, was incredible at being able to pull this information out of me. Maybe Claude wouldn't do so great, but there are certain people that can like ask you the questions and really get you to articulate it.
Love that. And, Amy, you do this a lot for me as well in helping me to try to get enough order that at least you pretend like it's making sense, so then I feel confident to write it down. The thing I think for most people is if you get to that point, a lot of times people believe that everyone else should be able to follow along from that. And what I have come to learn is that is not true. In fact, most people will still be even more confused or even in their soul a little bit distrusting of it because, again, it works against what they have already concluded or experienced or are sure of. If it's innovative, creative, and new, well, by definition, it is counter to the current examples and stories that are out there. So in addition to spending a lot of time communicating and a lot of time talking, I also spend a lot of time listening to try to tease out from people what about it doesn't make sense to them or just feels wrong. And this is hard because you feel so sure of the idea and you want to be in sales mode. But to do a good job in sales mode, you need to have some clues about where people are coming from so that you can position your messaging into a part of their thinking that is already ripe for a new idea. And so I take that as a big responsibility. How is it my job to make this real for them?
Yeah. And so what I would say there is like, why does this suck? Why is this awful? And really getting vulnerable with it too. And that's
Right.
super hard. That's super hard to do. And it takes a big emotional toll too, I think. So being able to like create some armor around yourself of like, just putting yourself in a completely objective space of this is all to serve this greater purpose rather than feeling like personally critiqued by it.
It's really hard because this is like something you're giving birth to. It's like something that you're passionate about by definition. But the way I think of it, as I do think of these things in a similar way that I might think of my children or other types of creations where in service of what's best for the idea or the innovation, what do I need to do to help it thrive?
Yeah.
Not what
I'm
do I
not
need
going to
to do
ask
from my
why
own.
Malcolm sucks though. I'm not going to do that. I'm sorry.
Like I am happy to tell you what is a challenge with my own children for sure. But yes. The next thing I do is I look for collaborative evidence. And sometimes that comes from those conversations with people, and I lean on their language to talk about it. And sometimes it comes from something I'll read in a news or The Economist or some other place that's completely random, but then helps reinforce. And I will bring that back and then draw the connection between my big idea and what that signal is that is reinforcing my ideas. I'm always looking for ways to enhance and broaden and maximize the communication for sense making, right? I'm just trying to help people make sense of that idea. And so back to the like vulnerability and humility, I have to be willing to let go the authorship a little bit and care about the idea landing. And so instead of always pointing back to my own evidence, I look for other people's evidence, and then I can support that. And ultimately, it takes lots of these different signals for people to be able to see a pattern. And I see it as my job to shorten that window by being very intentional, very purposeful, very consistent, and just doing it over and over and over again. And to give you a sense, the bigger the idea, the longer it takes. And we're talking years, not weeks, not months. And we're talking repetition of a level that you really start to think that you sound like an idiot because you're saying it too much. And it's only at that point that you start to get through. And the way you know you get through, and this has always been my signal across anything, is when other people are saying that idea of their own volition in their own context, that's when you know you got through. Not when they're quoting you.
Explaining it to you. They're like,
Explaining
hey, Meg,
it to you as it was, as if it
I've
was
heard
their
this
idea.
great thing that I
Yes.
need to tell you about.
That's right. That's right. So I like to tell myself that my ideas are always best when other people have them. And early on, I took that as a little bit of a woe is me. But over time, I realize there's true magic in that because I care about the idea and I really don't care about the credit. So that's the hard truth. If you really are early and you really are coming up with something new, you probably have to be able to yield the full credit for it in service of making it happen.
That was great. Wow. Okay. All right. Well, we had a great discussion with Eynat.
Oh, isn't that lovely?
What
Isn't she
were some of-
amazing?
She is. Yeah. And frightful. No,
Yeah, no, seriously. She's one of the few unicorn CEOs that are female. She has charted an entirely new course, and yet she shows up not only with humility, but with a lot of patience for explaining the complexity of her thinking and the passion that she has for solving a real need in the market. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Any takeaways from the discussion? Anything you learned?
Yeah. So one of my big takeaways or one of my sort of observations back to connecting dots on things that may not necessarily be obvious, I felt Amy, when she was describing her journey of bringing AI into the organization, and she mentioned the AI leader that she brought in, what I was thinking in that moment was she was truly describing an example of your golden job, where she specifically said this AI leader is not just technically great, but great at having business conversations and connecting with non-technical people. And that is just one of many examples of this translator role and why it's so critical. And I think that in a nutshell, describes a lot of what I hear when I talk to people trying to do AI transformations, that one of the biggest needs that they bring with AI expertise isn't just tool capability, but it is the capability of getting curious about the business needs and helping to map the relationship between what the technology can bring and what the business can bring. And when you think about our conversation with Jeff Spahn-Bank, she kept saying the tool is the last thing. I think that just, again, reinforces that thinking.
Yeah, and I think it also speaks to the need for systems thinkers. She talked quite a bit about like building that infrastructure, the foundation upon which everything else can get done.
Yeah, and so I guess my plea, encouragement, or thought is that if you know that you are good at translation and you're a systems thinker, learning how the tools can be applied is a huge need in the market. And maybe quit defining yourself in your past roles and start thinking about how you position yourself to help in this type of a role, because these transformational roles matter.
A call to action. I love it, Meg.
Call to action. Get out there and let's invent the future together, everyone. I believe in us.
And let's make every day count.